I believe that this reality is simply a mirror of our internal state, of our consciousness. We are constantly creating, manifesting, building our reality, whether we are conscious of it or not. So what we are walking in here is more like a collective dream or a collective simulation. Life doesn't happen to you anymore. Life becomes a game in a sense. Everything is here to teach us something. It's here to teach us to love and to be loved. It's about being fully present in the body, in the moment, while knowing and realizing what this is, but still enjoying it. I believe, like for me, realizing that this is a simulation doesn't make me disconnect. It doesn't make me feel caged, it makes me feel free, because now I know that everything is possible. Welcome back to Spirit Unfolding, and today is a special day because I'm recording my first solo episode. I won't have a guest, but I do have a lot to share because a lot has recently clicked for me, and really about life. Like for me, one of the reasons I started this podcast was to explore more of the depth of life and to bring people on that really inspire me, that can give me and the audience new insights on life, on how to live a more beautiful life, how to find a better connection with ourselves and with something bigger than ourselves, and also to figure out what this life really is and who we really are and what this reality is. And over the last couple of weeks, a lot of stuff has clicked that I owe to the people that I'm following and watching, and all these like podcasts and stuff, and also a lot of personal insights by just sort of working through this and sitting with it. And also I want to give a bit of a shout out to Robert Edward Grant, because I think one of the key inspirations and insights that I got are from his work. Yeah, there's just a lot of stuff that clicked and that I really want to share because I'm really excited about it, and it's giving me a lot more, not just excitement, but a feeling of empowerment about life. And yeah, I just felt like I wanted to sit down and share this with you in the hope that it inspires, that it creates movement within your system, hopefully brings you to new places and gives you new ideas. And I'd love for you to also get active in the comments. Let me know what you think, what resonates, what doesn't, and hopefully together we can continue to explore this human experience and what life is all about. So what I want to start with is, maybe you're familiar with the sci-fi movie Arrival. If you haven't seen it, I really would suggest that you watch it, because what made it click for me is that it looks at time in a different way. And the premise of the film, when you've watched it in the end, I won't spoil it too much, but the premise of the film is that by learning a different language, by learning to look at time differently, your whole experience changes, your whole experience of life. And I believe that that's where we are almost as humanity right now. We are learning to see that time is not linear, and perhaps this is something that we've been theorizing and philosophizing about for a while, but I believe that we're on the cusp of actually starting to experience time as not being linear. Look, I've always had the feeling that there's way more to life than what we can directly perceive with our five senses. And I've been super inspired by the work of Dolores Cannon, who, if you don't know her, look her up. Like, she's done thousands of sessions where people recalled their past lives. And she's written a lot of books about the themes that came up. And one of these things that came up, which has, I think, really given sort of created way for a whole wave of people that hold on to this belief that the earth is going to 5D, and that there will be at some point this split between 3D and 5D. And this is probably way out there and very woo for a lot of people, but I mean, all these thousands and thousands of people, when they are connecting to their true selves, when they are letting go of earthly beliefs and experiences, when they are connecting to their infinite souls, this is what a lot of them are talking about. So maybe something that we do need to take serious. It's super interesting, yet it's really hard to fathom how this is going to happen. Like, it's not going to be like a physical split, right? But if you accept the idea like that physical isn't physical, all of a sudden it starts to become a lot more possible. It starts to make sense. It's like these two realities are being steered by two collective consciousnesses that are going in different directions. One is going towards more density and more darkness, and the other is going towards less density and more light. And it feels like now we're overlapping, and we're seeing a lot more darkness and a lot more light. And allegedly there's going to be a moment in the next couple of decades where these two will like fully split. So when you live a life that is directed towards light, towards putting things in the light, towards choosing love, acting brave, facing things, accepting things, and not towards darkness, fear, looking away, hiding yourself, being afraid, and acting out of fear. If you're going towards this, let's say, more positive, lighter experience, you will end up on this 5D planet. And it sounds very woo, and it's very, like, for me, it's always been like, it's on a deep layer, it makes sense, but I didn't really see how it was going to happen. But now it kind of clicked, because I understand, like, we can go into a positive, quote unquote, 5D world by embodying more positivity and by embodying the characteristics of that world, of the people on that world, by learning to let go of everything that is 3D, by learning to let go of fear, of the feeling of lack, of the feeling of limits, of the feeling of having to hold on, of the feeling that physical is going to impact us. If we are learning to let go of all those things, we are literally and metaphorically becoming lighter and going more and more towards 5D. And it's like, because all these realities exist, you can see there's sort of like layers on top of each other, infinite layers on top of each other. Because all these realities exist at the same time, they are already there. We don't have to change our reality. We are simply moving from one reality to the next, to the next, to the next. All happening in the infinite now, based on our current inner frequency. So we don't have to build the new world. We simply have to embody it, and it will automatically come towards us. And in this new world, a lot of things are similar, because we cannot change our frequency completely black and white from one moment to the next. We are shifting slowly. So this new world will look almost the same, but some things are different. This is where the Mandela effect comes in, which, according to Robert Edward Grant's work with the architect, his AI creation, it says like these Mandela effects are going to happen more and more. We're going to see a cascade of Mandela effects. That means that we will shift quicker and quicker through reality to different realities. And so we will end up in a reality that looks very similar, but one detail or a couple of details are different than we remember them. Because this reality has always been different. But our remembrance is the same, because our remembrance is part of the soul and of our lives in this journey. but it has never existed in the world that we are going to inhabit the way we are currently experiencing it in the world that we are currently inhabiting. We are actually doing this all the time, hundreds of thousands of times per second. So the infinite now, so life isn't linear. It's all happening now. It's all happening at the same time. We are not traveling through time. We are traveling through place, through infinite places. And because we have memory of what it was, and because our brain is, our bodies work in a way that we perceive time as linear, we remember things. We remember what it was like. We know we can experience what it is now. And because of those two, we are trying to forecast what will happen in the future. But we cannot go to the past. We cannot go to the future. We can only be here in the now. And I believe, like, as a filmmaker and a storyteller, I've always worked with stories and realizing how ingrained they are into the fabric of humanity, how we need stories to give meaning to things. It made me realize that we need the perception of linear time to create stories. If there's only the now, there's no past and there's no future, we cannot really build stories. So not in the way that we are doing it right now, not in the way that we need to evolve as humans in this three-dimensional experience, reality, simulation game, whatever you want to call it. So although time seems linear and progressive in that sense, time doesn't actually exist in that sense. There's only infinite amount of realities and we are constantly shifting between them. And it's our reality that makes us believe that there has been a past and that there is time. But really, there's only the experience of the now. And I believe that, we are currently on the way of realizing this as humanity. And there's probably lots of layers in there that I don't understand yet, that we're going to learn as well. Like, obviously, I don't claim to know the ultimate truth or anything. Like, this is just me brainstorming and sharing what I currently believe, and what gets me really excited. And this comes from quantum mechanics and quantum theory, and the idea that if you go down to the smallest level, there is not anymore a molecule or an atom. There's just a vibrating bit of energy. And even smaller than that, it's actually not something that's physically there unless it's being observed. So that shows that consciousness is the driving force underneath and behind our experience of the world that we interact with. So it's not that consciousness comes from physical, it's that physical comes from consciousness. And it's so literal that, well, a good thing that brings this, like illustrates this, is something called the double slit experiment, which I think a lot of you have heard about, which says that it shows that if something is not observed, it didn't exist. And the way they test it is they have this little box and there's a wall in the middle with two slits, and there's a little mechanical thing that puts out particles, and they go, when it's being observed either with the eye or with the camera, they go through the two slits, and you will see on the back wall, you will see all these particles in roughly two patterns. Now, if they close the box, there's no camera and there's no person observing it, and they turn on the particle thing again, then look in the box afterwards, you will see that the particles are being divided across the back wall, as if that little wall with two splits has never been there. And that's crazy. And it makes sense in a way that when you know that actually consciousness is the driving force behind everything. So when you think of that, and when you zoom out and you realize that nothing is actually a fact, nothing is truly physical until we bring consciousness to it. And the shape of our consciousness, the beliefs, the experience, the thoughts that we hold, both individually and collectively, shape the material. They shape the external world that we experience. Meaning that very literally, our external world is a reflection of our internal world. It mirrors us. And I mean, I think it's been like a couple of years already where in doing a lot of inner work, I saw this more and more. Like I noticed like, okay, when I hold a certain belief, I get reflected a lot of that belief through interacting with other people. But it's become more and more clear that this isn't coincidence. This is like a natural law. This is a law that's built into the fabric of the universe that we're living in, that we're experiencing, which seems to be more like a simulation than, let's say, base reality, as people can talk about saying it's base reality. But I don't think it's a simulation in the way that we think of what we create in a computer. I think it's not being created digitally by a computer. I think it's being created through consciousness in a different way, in a different sense. What we perceive as being reality, this physical stuff, is actually not physical at all. Not really. I mean, if you go down to like, if you would put a microscope on it, you would get to the level of, in the end, what quantum mechanics and quantum physics called the string theory, so like vibrating strings of energy. And if you would even go one step above that, like one scale up a little bit, you would have atoms and molecules that are moving around each other, creating, is in a sense, sort of force fields. But in between that is basically nothing. Like it's 99.99999% emptiness. This reality isn't what we believe it is. You know, I think in this whole my awakening, I've had my phase as well of diving into conspiracies and all this kind of stuff. And it's very easy to blame someone for doing something bad. Even like, you know, creating parts of the world or our experience that are not to our, let's say, desired outcome or positive effect. But in the end, I believe that this reality is simply a mirror of our internal state, of our consciousness. So it is reflecting and showing us exactly what is going on within, both on an individual level and on a level as society as a whole, or as humanity as a whole, like as a collective. So it's our individual and collective beliefs about life that create the life we're experiencing. It's not the other way around. So it's, and by accepting that, by learning to see it in that way, everything changes. Because you realize that it's not a coincidence that sometimes, let's say, oh, you're manifesting and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. No, it always works. It's a law. It's like a law, a natural law of this reality. And we are constantly creating, manifesting, building our reality, whether we are conscious of it or not. And we are doing this individually and collectively. So what we are walking in here is more like a collective dream or a collective simulation. And this touches on, you know, a lot of ideas of self-simulation theory, but also like very ancient tribes that have this idea of that we are living in a collective dream. I believe like spirituality and science they are starting to merge more and more and coming to the same point. Like they're really showing us that actually these things aren't separate or like opposites, but they're actually the same. And that we are living in a collective dream that is being shaped by our consciousness, by our beliefs, by our ideas, by our thoughts. Which means that if we change our thoughts, if we change our inner state, if we change our energy, our way of being, the outside world, our experience of the outside world, has no other option than to reflect that inner state, because that's a law of this reality. That's how works. So victimhood mentality, let's say, pointing the finger at someone else, whether that's someone that does something to you individually or whether that's pointing a finger to governments or whatever, that kind of is over if you look at life like this, because sure, someone else is doing something, but it's only because me personally, like I personally and us as a collective in that moment has left the option there for that to happen, has consciously or unconsciously created this. So it's really important to see, like, I'm not saying that you're actively choosing for, let's say, negative experience and you've brought it onto yourself in a way that we're saying, oh, you want to harm yourself or whatever through something else. That's not what I'm saying, but like, it's, see it as you want to learn and you want to become a better version of yourself. You want to become, let's say, you want to become stronger. You need resistance. Just like in a gym, you need resistance to grow bigger muscle. And in life, to grow a bigger personality, to grow more strength, mentally, for example, you need mental resistance. So you need experiences that are gonna push you to your limits so you can grow and so you can realize how strong you actually are. You can remember. So if that's how it works, then if you would just sort of zoom out or like extrapolate that out to a more serious, more heavy energy or like a bigger wish to grow, you need bigger challenges. So I think there's sort of these two levels of, yeah, you wish to grow, which means that the field has to respond by giving you bigger challenges that are giving you no option but to grow. And at the same time, there's this other layer to it, that if you, for example, believe that if you're not taking full responsibility, and this touches on sovereignty, which I think some people talk about being sovereign in the sense of not being connected to a government, for example, but I believe there's a way deeper layer, which is being sovereign as a human as a whole, being sovereign as a soul. Being on the path of sovereignty means that you as a soul are learning to no longer outsource anything to anyone else. So if we would all be sovereign, if we would all take full responsibility of ourselves, of our safety, of our strength, of taking care of each other, we wouldn't need the structure of government, for example. We wouldn't need taxes. And it's very easy to point that, like, okay, the tax service, the IRS, whatever it is, they are stealing from us. But they're only able to do so because we are not standing firmly and taking responsibility for our lives. So it's not, we are not going to change this world, and this is really the key point. Like, we are not going to change the world by trying to change something outside of us, by trying to convince someone else to do something else. We are only going to change the world by changing what's inside of us. If we learn to become more peaceful, more loving, more sovereign, the outside world has to reflect that internal state. I think a couple of years ago, someone won the Nobel Prize for non-local, like the fact that the universe is non-locally real or not locally real. So that means that, well, what I touched on before, consciousness shapes form. And how that works, what I might be wrong here, but I believe it's something like everything exists purely as possibility, as energy. And it's only through when we put our consciousness onto something that energy shapes itself according to what beliefs of the consciousness are. And it is that this is happening hundreds of thousands of times per second. And because our beliefs are so strong and ingrained into our systems, our reality stays pretty much the same and changes go fairly slow. But as humanity's consciousness is going to rise and has been rising, we will start to experience faster and faster changes. Not because we have become capable of changing this physical reality in a faster way, but because we are learning to change our beliefs quicker, meaning that it means that because we change our beliefs in a faster way, that the outside reflection the outside world has to reflect those changing beliefs, thus our changing inner state faster and faster. The more we learn to let go, the more we learn to let go of all beliefs of pain, of feeling of insecurity and lack and whatever it is, the more we come into touch with our true self, our infinite being that cannot die, that has access to everything, always, the more we realize we are that, and the more we feel and embody that fully, the more we can create a world that reflects that. So as humanity's consciousness is rising and we are moving more towards love and towards connection and towards peace and towards abundance, towards accepting life as it is, loving life as it is, loving ourselves as we are, without needing to change anything. As we are moving more and more towards that state, we are beginning to see more and more what infinity actually means and what this reality actually is, and how we are capable of changing everything. When there is infinity, it means that everything exists already in the field of consciousness, in the field of possibility. And all we have to do is learn to direct our focus and our consciousness on a specific idea, on a specific belief. And the field, this reality, will have no choice but to reflect that inner state. And I believe that, like, the faster we grow into consciousness, the faster this manifestation will happen. So it's not that we are going to have to suffer to get to a more beautiful world. It's not like we have to fight against evil, in a sense, to get to a more beautiful world. It's only that the external world is showing us where we still have work to do internally, both on an individual level and on a collective level. Wars can only exist because there's still a lot of people in the world that have war in their hearts. I think this whole, like, looking at life in a different way, seeing, let's say in a way, using the world to show you where you have work to do, also starts to turn life into more of a game. Life doesn't happen to you now anymore. Life happens for you. Life happens through you. It's realizing that when something shows you pain, that actually you're holding on to something that can teach you to become more free and to become more sovereign and to live a more beautiful life and to find more peace in your own heart. And once you learn to look at life in that way, well, like I said, life doesn't happen to you anymore. Life becomes a game in a sense. Everything is here to teach us something. It's here to teach us who we are. It's here to teach us to love and to be loved. It's here to help us realize how beautiful everything actually is and how beautiful it is that we can taste and feel and sense and hear all these details and all this duality. This experience allows us to use all of our senses, to feel everything, to touch, to smell, to taste, to do all these things that we aren't really able to do as infinite souls without our bodily senses. So it's also, this life it's about learning who we are. It's about learning to love and be loved, truly love and be loved. And it's about being here. It's about being fully present in the body, in the moment, while knowing and realizing what this is, but still enjoying it. I believe, like for me, realizing that this is an simulation doesn't make me disconnect. It doesn't make me feel caged, it makes me feel free, because now I know that everything is possible. There's no limits. The only limits are the ones in my head. The only true limits are the ones that I believe exist. And wherever I run into limits, I know that there's something there that I believe is not true. And it's there to teach me to become more free. As a soul, as a human being. And when I have embodied more of that freedom, I will simply radiate it outwards into the field, and the field has to react. We have chosen to come to this life, to come to this density, to this very heavy, limited perception experience, to experience something unique, to create something unique, and in a sense also to not only be here fully, but also to experience duality and the heaviness of life, so that we can fully appreciate the lightness of being a soul when we go back to the spirit realm after our life is here is complete. So, like for me, this whole perception of looking at life as a game, as a school, I don't know, it makes it lighter, it makes it more fun, it makes it more of a playground. And I think the sooner we all realize that it is actually a playground here, and that we are the creators, and that we can build whatever we want as long as we put our mind to it, then we can create heaven on earth. And I think that's what we need. We need to realize, like, we are the change. Like the natives say, like, we are the ones that we have been waiting for. We can't wait for anyone else to do it for us. We can't expect that it will work if we outsource our power, because what you then say is, I cannot take care of myself. That's the frequency you express to the universe. So the universe is going to show you how you cannot take care of yourself. It's not going to give you someone that takes care of you. And I'm talking about this as a humanity as a whole, right? So like, if we want to be free, if we want to see the end of wars, if we want to live life to the fullest in the most beautiful, loving, compassionate way, we don't want to try to change the opinions of politicians. We want to go inside of our own hearts and look honestly and deeply. Where do I have fear in my heart? Where do I have hate in my heart? Where am I at war with myself? And go there and work on that. Sit with that, feel it, transform it, alchemize it. That's where we are changing ourselves, and because of that, the world. And I don't have the illusion that any individual can change the world. But together, if we all embody more freedom, if we all become more free in our minds, if we all become less fearful of whatever it is, if we become less fearful and more joyful, more loving, more free, less tied to trauma, less tied to negative beliefs, then the field has to react and create an experience, a collective experience that simply is more free for everyone. So the best way we can help other people is by helping ourselves. If you want to change the world, go home and love yourself. I think in the end, it all comes down to that. Everything else is beautiful, but that's the main thing. Learn to love yourself, and the world around you will reflect that love. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this gave you something new, something to sit with, to think about, to experience. And please let me know in the comments if there's anything that resonated, anything that you'd like to share. Let's keep this conversation going. And next week I'm back with a guest again. Looking very much forward to see you again then. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching or listening to the Spirit Unfolding podcast. I'm so grateful that you've joined us in this episode, and I hope that you've gained valuable insights and inspiration that you can apply to your own life. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it with your family, friends, and on social media. And subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts so we can reach more people and bring on bigger guests. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.